I'm also in the same team as Erik said, in the TAS team, and I'm working on the Microsoft stack. So I will have a talk about implementing a CI/CD pipeline on the Microsoft stack on TFS and VSTS. And I want to show you a customer case. For us, a customer is the CAG team. I will explain a little bit what they are doing, and how we have done and what the considerations are for them to have an efficient CI/CD pipeline. So, CAG, it stands for Centraal Adviesgegevens. It's a complex application with a lot of databases, which is mainly back-end systems and information that they combine in different web APIs. So it's rather complex with a lot of versions and APIs all together, and they want to support it in a automated CI/CD pipeline. And that was the question they asked us. How can we handle 3 parallel production versions and in 9 high-quality web APIs? So total 27 versions are in the production. It's an on-prem installation. So that was the question. They were already ahead. They had done several things before we came in, especially on the build, but not on the release. So we have added the release pipeline as well. Something about VSTS. Is there any experience with VSTS? Okay, a little bit. Okay. Okay, Aaron, you too. VSTS is a Microsoft tool. It's cross-platform and cross-language, so you can build also in Java, Xcode or something. We implement a hosted TFS globally. So for around the world, we implement a high available TFS here. We have 2 weeks ago we merged the Dutch Rabo Nederland in the last merge for the database into the. So we have one TFS right now, and we're planning to move to the cloud, which is the VSTS instance. That's coming in the next, hopefully, months, that we can migrate to the cloud instance of TFS, VSTS. We look at the instance of, this is a basic release pipeline. Edit code, have a code repository, build it, test it, release it, and to your environment. So that's the basic, of course, the basic line for the CI/CD pipeline. How to automate things? You have to start first. Is the code repository? Is it fitted into the necessary requirements to have a CI/CD pipeline or a efficient? And can we accelerate on that? Is it proper? They use already TFVC. This is the old version TFS version control. And the first step is go to Git, because that's a lot easier for building and for code pull request and code reviews, etc., and also for the release. So they had, this was the first screenshot of their implementation with a lot of folders. Main, you see here, maybe is development, and it's based on environments. So the first step we did was go to TFS and split it into different applications. So every application has its own repo here. So these are all the repos they are. That was an easy copy paste. So the history is all the old history is still there, and we started again with the latest version, and that was an easy step to make. Then we have to implement an appropriate branch and merge strategy for them. There are a lot of strategies for branching and merging, of course. And we thought, and with cooperation with the team, that Kitflow will fit in this place, because we had to deal with a lot of release versions. And Git has a where is it? The release here. We use the release branches. So they have a couple of release branches and versions in the release branch. This is the structure of one of the repos, and you can see there is a master develop, but there's also a subfolder release with one version at that time in, and there are more. There were three versions there. So there are always three release versions there, and they will. This is connected to that part of the flow. They're quite successful with this implementation, and so they have a good separation of all the code and all the versions, and that works well. But there are more options. If you want to have a really fast continuous delivery, you want to minimize all the branches, of course, and the ultimate goal is to have a one branch strategy. Mm-hmm. But in this case, this will fit in the team that we're asking for. Okay, something about the TFS agent. I've added that a few minutes ago to have maybe a proper what the difference is between the TFS, which is only an administration tool with a hosted database. The actual building and releasing is done by agents. So we have a hosted TFS instance, but a localized agents. And that is maybe similar to what Eric, the agents is part of what the team uses. So they can create their own build agents, build servers with their own agents. So they are in control of their own builds. And also with the deploy agents. Mm-hmm. But we have also implemented hosted agents. So if there's a new team, they are not mature or something, they can use the agents as well, hosted by our team. And they have connection with the production environment and also to Azure. We're working on an Azure instance as well, so they can deploy to Azure as well. So you have to deal with on-premise agents, locally or hosted, and they do not only build the agents, but can also deploy. Depends on what the capabilities of the server are, which is where the agents are installed, and they can deploy to the target environment. And we do a lot with Azure, and we also deploy the infrastructure as well. So the infrastructure is code, ARM templates for Azure to create instantly the target environment and deploy afterwards the application. So if I mean hosted locally here, it's about the agents. TFS itself is hosted, and if you go to VSTS, which is hosted by Microsoft in Azure, which is the same procedure. Pools and queues, which is a little bit difficult. We implement pools where we can set security, etc., and every team can use that pool, and then there's a queue in the team itself, and so they can have their own pools and own queues, and we can provide them also with custom pools and agents that we provide. So that's a little bit to have knowledge about the agents. Okay, we want, now we have the code in the repository and all the merchant branch strategy. Now we have to build it, and we have to build it for a CI/CD pipeline. Let's see what's the build definitions. There are a lot of build definitions here in folders, and in each folder there is a CI build and a CD build. The CI build is only for fast building and verification, and the CD building produces the artifacts for deploying afterwards. So we have two builds on every branch. On every repo, sorry. And with TFS, we can execute a build triggered on a folder. So if you have more release branches or more feature branches, maybe you can have one build definition, which is triggered if there is maybe an extra branch, a release branch. If there is a change there, the same build definition will trigger and will execute the build. So, and that's the easier part, and that's why we used the Git flow, because if there is a new version, they create a branch, new branch, merge it to it, and automatically the CD build is triggered there and can be deployed automatically to the environment. If you look at the build summary here, this is a successful build, and what you can see here, there is connection to the backlog. If you commit, you can relate it to a work item or a backlog item, and also with test results, and also with SonarQube, etc. That's all included in the build definition. So you have a overview of your quality of your build here. And that's nice to have, and all the logs you can download and analyze, etc., etc. This is a CI build, which doesn't produce the artifacts itself, but it's for fast building, and will be triggered at every commit. Here is the trigger itself. It's continuous integration. That means trigger here, and it's, if you can read it, it's connected to the development branch. So every change in the development branch will trigger this CI build. That was implemented here. So now we have implemented the CI build and triggered it automatically. Now we have to define the CD pipeline, which is also a build definition, and there are steps. It's a little bit difficult to read. Here's a SonarQube. Where is this? Fortify is running. SonarQube is here, and it produces and it's publishing the artifacts. So it's a longer build definition here to execute for verification of the builds. And you can also produce here images, Docker images, and you can also check it for vulnerabilities, etc. So that's all you can all include in the build definition. They've implemented a reference pipeline. We have defined several reference pipelines for the team, so they can choose what kind of type of application you are creating. We have several reference pipelines for them, so they can use it, and they can implement and change it by themselves. So we have implemented the build definition. It's a JSON file, which is in Git as well, in our Git, and they can pull it to their own team project and implement the build definition. If you look at how TFS has implemented also the release pipeline of the release definition, it's almost the same structure. It is the same structure because it's built on the same infrastructure. It's using the same agents. So if you're building or releasing, you can use the same tasks here. Not every task, but most of the tasks you can use in build, but you can also use in release. So you can use the test task here, you can use them as well here. Here maybe you do some load testing or additional maybe building or creating variables, etc., etc. And here you can see the pipeline itself. These are the environments: development, test, acceptance, and here's production. And this is the pipeline. Every pipeline normally has the same task here. So the build is put in here. That's coming from this definition. We execute the build, we see that later, and it will go through this pipeline. So we don't change the build, so the only change here is the variables, of course, the environment variables, and that's the only change. And you also can see here the approvals. It's a little bit maybe difficult, but we implement a approval. Which step should be approved by whom? And there we have a security compliant pipeline we have created, also which is the reference pipeline. So we can implement, if you want to go to production, maybe a security officer should be in the approval team. they should have approval from the security guy. And that's what we help the teams with, so they don't have to think about a lot of time is wasted, not wasted maybe, but to have all the procedures here, which is normally for a big company, of course, and a great bank, big bank, to have the all the approvals, security. And we're implementing a security compliant CI/CD pipe for a reference, and they can use that. So they can speed up, of course, there. This is triggered in multiple on releases, and that's a little bit different. That's the release, the trigger for the release, for the build. Also, this build, this release is triggered if this build was successful. So now we have implemented a fully automated build and release pipeline here. So if the build will be triggered by commit or by a pull request, which is also a commit, of course, then the build will trigger, and if it's successful, it will automatically trigger the release itself. So then you have the complete automatic pipeline. But there are more options. You can also deploy it on the schedule or manually, and you can redeploy it, etc., etc. Now we want to execute the pipeline. This was the definition, and you can see here executing the build, which has a little bit more steps and a little bit more tests in it. And you can also see here the deployments. So you can see this build is for now only in deployment. That was a successful one. So you can precisely determine and see where your build is in the pipeline. And that is really easy for the teams to see, and you can have a dashboard on top of it. I'll show it later. This is the build of the release, and you can see here there are the environments, which is this is the version number, and you can see here these are a successful build. You can deploy it directly to acceptance and skip the test environments. That's also possible. And here you have all the information for the release, and this is the actually release steps executing here, and with the log here. A little bit too difficult to see, but there is a lot of information here on what he is doing in the build, but also in the release. And only also from one tool, and from one website. This is an overview for them, and you can see here are the builds. Builds are red, of course, and these are the releases. So you have a broad overview. They have a broad overview from all the versions and all the builds and all the releases they have done. And they can see there's a lot of green, and there's upping success. And this dashboard is based on all the definitions and all the execution of and they use this a lot to see what the overall health of their applications is, and what type of, what version is in what environment. Okay. For now, we are moving ahead, and we're busy right now with getting more insights from all the CI/CD pipelines, because we have one tool for one TFS. We can get information from the TFS, and then we have a broad overview for all the teams using the CI/CD pipeline here, and we can advise them to improve here. Or maybe use another build step, or use another maybe build definition, which maybe fits more if we compare it to other teams. So we extracting the insights or the database into a Power BI instance, in a document DB, and then in a Power BI, and visualize that. And we're working on that right now. It's not finished right now. And so we can have a broad overview from all the pipelines are running, and CI/CD tabs are running, and advise the teams to improve. Another one is the migration to VSTS, to the cloud version. What I've already said is the security compliant reference pipelines on-prem, and we're now working on also for Azure, and include the infrastructure as code. The ARM templates we deploy in the same pipeline, also the ARM template, so we can create the resources in Azure, and we're working on that. And we have implemented an onboarding website, so teams can onboard on Azure, and they use the same, and we use the same pipeline to deploy this application, this website, and we use it by ourselves. So we develop also for the teams to be faster to the cloud environment. And so we have also all the difficulties with Azure, with security compliancy, which is a little bit of a green field right now. No, not a green field, but it's in the beginning of getting all the applications to Azure, to a cloud. And that's what we're working on. Okay, that was my short presentation. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have one. In your release pipeline, you have some checks. I guess those are manual steps.
Could be manual steps, yeah.
Do you have plans to automate those manual steps?
It depends on the team, of course. If they want to, they are in control of their own pipeline, of course. Of course, if you manual steps, there is a possible wait, depending on people. So you want to remove them and you want to automate them. And minimize your manual steps, I say, to have a complete automated pipeline. But you can start with all the manual steps and automate every step. You can have an iterative process there to automate all the manual steps you have in your pipeline. But then you have the structure of your whole pipeline there, and you can have experience with the pipeline and optimize it and automate it. So yes, it's possible. Any other questions? Yeah.
I was wondering, Git flow is not necessarily designed the way you're using it.
Okay. Yeah.
Because normally you go with one version, you go back to master.
Mm-hmm.
So like, when do you ever go back to master? When you have 3 release managers living?
Yeah. That's true.
But is it?
It's the latest version.
Master branch then is the latest.
The latest version,
okay,
is it? Yeah. So they have to. Maybe it's a better way to. They have to support earlier versions there.
But you're hot fixing on your release branches then, if you need to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's they are doing, and that's what they're doing. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
What was the reason for your customer to want 3 production versions?
They have to have. There are a lot of front ends using their APIs, and that was a requirement to have 3 versions back that they can use. So that not all the front end application have to upgrade if they upgrade. So you can say building a backwards compatibility, but it was for their I think an easier option. So I'm not involved in that decision as well.
So that's probably because they didn't properly version their API.
Yeah, that could be true. Yeah. So we and that's it may be the improvement to do. Have one version and do it another way. But they have a lot of advantages to use the pipeline to be faster and for deployment and changing. And that's also the case for 1 week to production, and that's also the.
It's a good example of the complexity that we have within Rabobank.
Yeah.
It's a huge variation in maturity of teams. And you have examples like this where proper versioning of APIs wasn't implemented historically.
Yeah.
And we have to develop the CD tooling to enable them to still work in an effective way.
So they can improve. I think faster than, and not worry about they can focus on implementing a better process and also on the application itself, and not on the process and for the deploy process. Yeah.
Yeah, I was positively surprised actually about the security approval step. So what do you offer to a security officer to approve that? What do you give them?
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
So obviously they want to ask a lot of questions, and if you want to have their approval within less than a week, you have to offer them already a lot of things.
A goat.
Yeah.
Barbecue.
Horse head. I don't know.
So they know, of course, that's coming, and yeah, they only have to approve it and say, oh, we agree on
They still ask
and
for
see
the-
check the test, etc. But I'm not for this case what they have exactly signed and approved on. That was.
Okay, but
Still
you-
ask for the piles of Excels, and then afterward set the check mark.
I did know
No, it's a mark.
there's of course everything has to do with change management as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's the manual approval is a process gratification step.
Yeah.
And in the end we'll go to pre-approved ways of working, I hope, in which we say, well, if this predefined pipeline is being used and you have all your tests in version management and your pipeline is being fixed and everything else, then you can go
Can
on to
resolve it.
production anyway,
Yeah.
and there's no need for for approval in the process itself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that you can't go from 0 to 100 within in zero time.
Yeah.
So this just needs time.
But we have
So
an
that's-
example of a pipeline that does that already with Rabobank.
Yeah.
They said we deliver every week, so the change is always small, so the risk is always low, so we don't have to do the extensive check.
Yeah.
And they agreed upon it.
Once you get to a certain point that you have certain confidence and you have
You can
small iterations, then
yeah, you can remove
Yeah.
that step, of course.
That's the key
Yeah.
aspect is
Yeah.
the business IT
No.
trust.
Yeah. At this moment we have there's with the implementation of continuous delivery in the whole of the organization, also the separation of duties came to discussion, because the separation of duties within hinders continuous delivery a lot, especially because it's not only dev and ops but also infrastructure. And you need infrastructure entitlements, or the configuration of infrastructure needs to be an application kind of thing, because you want to
Yeah.
have it in version management and it's application specific.
Yeah.
So at this moment we have a new policy which is decided upon that if you have everything in version management and you do automated testing and you have auditability in place and there's two more demands, then you're allowed to step from separation of duties to separations of tasks, which means that if you're the one committing, you're not allowed, or you shouldn't be able to go through the whole pipeline yourself. It can be all automatic, yeah, but if you're doing the application and you're also application code and you also build all of the test code,
Yeah.
then you're doing everything yourself. So that's not allowed.
one question on that though. What I've heard is that the separation of concerns is a mandate also. I'm not sure if AFM or the DNB, but it was a mandate.
Mandatory.
Yeah. So it's a requirement also within banks to have that. So how did you get around that?
It's not a mandatory thing. We had German banks over as well. They say their national bank forces them to, but the thing is, within the Netherlands and European Central Bank, they demand you to be in control. So to prevent that somebody can deploy its own code without any measures in between that guarantee quality or feasibility or lack of misuse.
Okay,
So, and the way you do that, before it was separation of duties as a means to facilitate this, and that was in the policy, and auditors come by and check your own policy, which, if you're working long enough according to one policy, everybody says, well, we're doing this because the ECB says we have to, but the ECB tells you to write down a policy. So if you write down another policy, the auditors come check that.
okay. So in essence, as long as you have auditability and you have a sort of like approved pipeline for which you can guarantee this auditability, and you have separation of tasks, that should be possible to you're not, how to say, you should not be held back by the separation of concerns.
Yeah, within Rabobank, that's true. So we have the policy in place now, and we have security department and there's change management as well. So the application department, security officers are in accordance, are aligned with us. The infrastructure security officer, which is working in the same department, by the way, is not aligned with it at the moment. So we need some. There's a decision already, so it's valid. So he doesn't have. There's no reason to complain. But for now, he's not working at that way. So this takes time.
Okay. But
And even the auditors, I already spoke to the auditors, and they're aligned as well. And we made the agreement that if we build reference pipelines like these, and this quarter, they'll come by and check one of our pipelines, either in Rancher or in TFS, and they'll give their approval or they'll give their rating, and give all kinds of improvement advices. Okay? I hope we'll get a sufficient, which means that they say you're in control if you're working this way, and that means that everyone within our organization has the guarantee that they're compliant if they're using our references.
That sounds really cool because
Yeah.
it
Takes away a lot of burden.
yeah, and how to say that where I am working is I'm working exactly on those reference implementations. So that really sounds like something aside from how to say helping developers who don't know how to write well. This is also a way to deal with this problem.
Yeah, we built a module. It might be valuable, but I don't know if it's mature enough to share with others. But we built a module within Excel Deploy, which checks if the artifact that's being deployed is actually coming from Nexus, because only valid pipelines are allowed to deploy in Nexus, to store things in Nexus. So therefore, if it's coming from Nexus, it suggests that it's a approved artifact. So this means that we can guarantee that everything in production is in control. There's no problem. If somebody's interested, we have a lot of ideas about it.
Yeah, and I think if I were a security person trying to check for all kinds of things, I wouldn't do it by hand. I would automate it, of course. I'm a developer, so.
Yeah.
And I would love to have,
Yeah, sure.
like, if these pipelines have a hook for me to run my own checks against, some artifact. Just give me the ID of the artifact, and I'll get that artifact and look for anything suspicious. If it's fine, I'll say I checked it for these kind of signatures. I didn't see anything suspicious.
It can even be a approval for the whole pipeline. It's not for every environment. So if you approve it for for test, then you can.
Just if I say your pipeline looks fine to me, then you can still do a lot of things. You can insert stupid dependencies with vulnerabilities. I want to check a little bit more than just the.
That's why also monitoring the pipeline itself.
And if I have a hook on that pipeline to validate, for example, the results from Sonar, that would be great.
And we do have security tools like Fortify, like Sonar and Nexus CLM in place to do a lot of those kind of checks.
And ARC sites to follow if somebody is doing anything on the systems that's not allowed.
That's not necessary for all applications.
No.
But the interesting thing is that for security officers and compliance officers, they have to learn at least to read code.
Yeah.
Because they're used to reading Word documents and saying, no, this is a process.
It's fine, and it's okay.
But now we're coding the process.
Yeah.
Do you have a Word document? No, I have a Git repository.
Yeah, good luck.
But we do have examples where the auditor says, as long as it's not in a Word document, it's something I can read, then nobody's capable to read it, so therefore it's not valid.
We can make an exporter.
There was a question here.
Are you running any security scans on your code or even on your API endpoints in the staging environment? Or?
It depends on the team,
Yeah.
Is it being done already? Or?
Yes, some applications do that.
And at this moment with
based on front end, the customer facing.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine it's also something coming from the security teams, that they dive into that themselves and add some tools to the pipelines. So please use this for your API, even mandatory maybe even, to make sure that everything is secure.
So Fortify is one of the mandatory things if you're internet facing. And we have a cyber defense center. They offer pen testing facilities and services, but there's a lot of manual tests in it, or manual steps. And at this moment we're looking into baseline SaaS services for these kind of activities, so that the pen testing, the security experts can really use all their expertise to not only do the tedious standard work, but more focus on the real extensive pen test, and then helping teams improve the few vulnerabilities they hopefully only find. So the experts can focus more on their real expertise.
Okay, are there any more questions? No?
No.
Okay? Yeah?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, last one.
back to your first step on your the migration from TFVC to
Yeah?
Would you recommend that to any other team?
Yeah, sure. Go to Git, yeah. That's,
do that tomorrow.
Yeah. It's also for the code reviews and pull requests, that's a lot easier.
Even if
there's a lot of investment
even
on.
if distributed version control is not really needed, you still.
Yeah, I recommend it to teams to use Git, but they are in control of their own sources, of course, and if they want to stick to TFVC, fine. Up to you. Yeah. Okay, that's the very last question.
No, I mean, I see there are two platforms, right? TFS, and then earlier we seen TAS and all. So from a strategy perspective, it's planned to have separate per technology, or as a department, or some, or we have to combine. I mean, what's the strategy around it?
But I don't
The
exactly.
platform like TFS, VSTS, and all separate code base and the repository and all. The earlier present before break we had for.
Yeah, there was an agent from
exactly.
from
So
the
there are
cattle.
two platforms actually. I'm saying so. We want to
Yeah,
continue
sure.
with
There
that,
are a
or-
lot of endpoints in possible in TFS and VSTS, so you can connect it to Jenkins and to have a connection also to Azure and to AWS, and so you can extend your pipeline and use additional tooling, and that's why we also containerize the agent there. So and we are now also busy with containerizing all the agents, so they spin up if they want to use it. So we use Docker for that and etc. And have connection to Nexus and also the backend system.
Ultimately, it's a team choice about which backend they want to use, but they have to use the repository.
So they are in control of their own application, and we do on the one hand the cattle, and if they want to use that or use TFS so that's up to them. But we have some cross references, and we use both tools from both sides, which are not both sides, but we use. We want to not to say there are two. We have a Java and a .NET or a Microsoft stack. We want to integrate that, and say you want a CI/CD pipeline. What fits your requirements best? Use that, or maybe use a little bit from that and a little bit from that, and that's best for you. So we're only advising there.
Even understood that TFS is not .NET purely. You could do Java development.
Sure.
And just
Jenkins, Maven, you can do everything in TFS if you want to.
Yeah.
So it's up to you.
And it's just like I think.
Okay.
Somebody else was asking a question. The centralized versus decentralized.
Yeah.
Doing everything that you have specified in code, it's fine to have anything that comes forward from that in a decentralized fashion, destroy it whenever it doesn't work anymore, spin it up anew. But to have something centralized, just like GitHub.com, I mean, where would we be without it?
Yeah. So the environments is decentralized. We can decentralize the agents if you want, but TFS is centralized. And so we have one database or multiple databases. That's one. So we can have a broad overview of all the teams, which is a little bit different from the cattle stack, of course. So it's more separated, but that's a choice. Okay, shall we stop and end the session? Okay.